Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Rogers, and I'm inviting you all to tune in to my show, Flip the Switch, How to Find the Light in Every Dark Shadow, every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ClearSourceRadio.com and iHeartRadio. Hey everyone, you are now listening to Flip the Switch, How to Find the Light in Every Dark Shadow on the Clear Source Radio Network. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you're having a wonderful week. You're now listening to your host, Melanie Rogers, on Flip the Switch, How to Find the Light in Every Dark Shadow on the Clear Source Radio Network, where people inspire people and also heard on iHeartRadio. I hope that you're having a wonderful week. I hope you're having a wonderful month. Yes, we're over halfway through February, and I know I'm the one that keeps reminding everybody about that. You know what? I'm going to flip the switch on that because every time I say it, I think I need to stop reminding people how fast time's going by. And I think what I'm going to choose to look at it like is that I'm putting it out there for people, including myself, to realize that time's going by so fast. How much of the last couple of months do you remember already? You know, Happy New Year. Once again, Happy New Year. Go back to that mindset at the beginning of the year. You know, it's interesting, and this is what we talk about a lot on here, of course, or I talk a lot about, how the roller coaster effect is in full bloom, I guess. Over the years, I've kind of witnessed the roller coaster effect where maybe I just pay ultra attention, or maybe I'm just over aware, whatever the situation is, about how a lot of us go through the same scenarios. And it seems to be almost a roller coaster effect in energy. And you know this. I talk about Elizabeth Peru, atmospheric stuff, universal stuff, and all that, and how we really are on a wave. And we are all experiencing similar type of feelings and emotions and situations and such, even though we're also individual. But I'm starting to notice I don't want to say a downward trend. I want to say a deeper trend once again. 2018 was tough. We know this by now. We've talked about this. We've experienced this. Elizabeth Peru's even addressed it, and all the different articles that you'll read have addressed how 2018 was such a deep year, a year to go deep, a year to uproot all of our issues that, you know, we're aware of, issues that we're not aware of, all that's been buried deep inside. For those of us who made ourselves somewhat aware that something important was happening and utilized that harsh energy to actually work with it, you know, as hard as that was, I think that group of us are feeling the lightness in 2019. I think that I'm pretty sure that the majority of people did go through that depth period. And it all depends on, everything always depends on attitude and perspective. I think with the people, a lot of people who went through that and chose not to open their eyes and look at it as a life lesson and something they needed to pay attention to, things they had to actually confront and heal and such, then those people out there are still looking at life as kicking them in the teeth, okay? And there's a lot of people I see on both sides of that spectrum. So, with that being said, when I'm talking about kind of the roller coaster thing, is I kind of feel a little bit of that energy. And like I said, it might be that I'm just paying attention to, you know, different individuals. And, you know, we all go by our surroundings. We go by what we see on TV, maybe what we see on social media. whatever. We're not privy to everybody in the world, of course. So it might just be that like the people I see, mostly I'll watch on Facebook and such, that it seems to be one way or another. It seems to be people went through a hard time and they're really embracing it, and this year is very light. Or that group of people who were, constantly acting kicked to the curb. I don't want to say acting. I'm saying we all felt that way, but putting it out there in a negative way without trying to learn from it. From what I saw, a lot of people, or at least a handful of people I saw, were just looking at it like, life is kicking them down, and they're not taking the lessons out of it. So what I'm seeing now, that wave, is a lot of those people are having a hard time dealing with things again, even though it's such a light year. So whichever end of the spectrum you're on, if you feel like, especially last year, I keep referring to last year because last year was very, very universal, and you felt like you were being kicked down over and over and over again. If you're in this year right now, that should be more of a clearing year, I guess, as far as I can feel, where we realize everything that was happening, where it uprooted a lot of stuff, and it should have. Now we can let it go, and now we feel much lighter. If you're in that dark phase still, pay attention. Pay attention to some of the things that I've been telling you, even telling you through people like Elizabeth Prue and such. I always think it's a waste to go through difficult moments without looking for the positive in it. Even if you don't want to look at it as the positive, look at the lessons. Life's trying to teach you something. If you're unhappy, whether it's in a situation, if you're unhappy with yourself, and I say this to myself as well, so I'm not preaching. I'm never preaching. If you're unhappy with situations in life, with life itself, with yourself and such, then that's a wake-up call. That's a lesson in itself. It's not something to sit there and moan and groan about and use as excuses to be a negative person, to do harm to others, to do, here's a classic example. And this is actually one of the scenarios that I've seen. And it's also going to be one of the scenarios I'm going to kind of roundabout talk about for the show tonight, which is basically another perspective show on how you want to look at things, especially things that you're not privy to. If you're not privy to situations and you want to just look and your brain goes wild and you start assessing a situation and judging it or rating it, how it can be so totally different things. And I'm going to throw out random examples. I only have 2 examples in my mind, but I'm going to think on it as we go. But going back to that, talking about things I'm seeing, I'm even seeing situations, and this is to describe what I was talking about on how you take something. Somebody feels unhappy in a relationship, okay? And I know, I'm thinking of one in particular, of course, but this is actually something I've seen a little bit of lately. Unhappy in a relationship. And instead of assessing that situation, there's two ways to look at it. And I don't know, like the person I'm thinking of, I don't even know very well. So it's one of those things, just like the other examples I'm going to give you, where I can sit here and I can look at what makes sense to me. You look at someone and they're in a relationship, and next thing you know, you kind of see, you're getting the feeling that it's a very, very loving relationship. And then you watch over time and you see the distance. Next thing you know, you see the darkness come out of somebody. And you kind of assess. Now, I'm good at that because I'm very intuitive. So I can watch something and I'm seeing it. A lot of people would have no clue. But in situations like that, which is going to go, like I said, toward tonight's show as non-judging, because you don't know, but also there's 2 scenarios that I'm looking at with that. If you're in like a relationship like that and it feels like it's not working for you, that's a wake-up call. That is a wake-up call to either address it, whatever the situation is, whatever's causing a person not to be happy in it. Or you have that other, the kind of the angel on one side, the devil on the other. to turn around and try to kind of, I don't know, get even in a way. And that's what I kind of saw. And I don't necessarily know that I'm right on with that, like I said, because that other part of it goes into tonight's show. But let's just say that if that's the scenario, and I've seen this over and over, and I'm only picking this one out of nowhere because I've seen it over and over and over in life. And when this happened and when I started watching and it started kind of coming to me like, I think that this person's going through this, and I think that's what's happening. It reminded me of everything I went through and how I'm looking at life now. And I thought, if something is dragging a person down where their darkness is coming up and they're basically kind of fighting back, it shows the unhappiness in the situation. If there's unhappiness in the situation, what I've learned to do in flipping the switch, assess the situation. If it, in this case, is like a relationship, decide what's creating the unhappiness within, address it, and show respect no matter what, even if being disrespected. And I have no idea what the situation is with that, as far as details and such. I just noticed different mindsets. I noticed different emotions. I noticed different actions and personality traits. And when I see a person's personality change and I see them kind of turning a little darker and kind of, mostly it's on social media, and I see them writing things or doing little things to where if I was the other person in that relationship, obviously I would take it wrong. I sit here thinking, what changed in this relationship? Which is none of my business. But my point is, just like everything else, not just relationships, I'm using that as an example because that's another thing that got into my head. But when something does change, or when you feel yourself turning a little dark inside, assess that. Figure out what it is. It might be within yourself. That's a lot of my issues last year, or the things I was going through, was stuff coming up within myself. And maybe other people, other situations, or whatever might have been triggering it. But ultimately, the issue, what is the word? The issue was within myself. Lies within myself, I think. I wanted to use the proper tense, I guess. I guess the issues lie within myself. Okay. So that's the stuff that got uprooted. And with that, now all the surrounding situations that might have triggered it, or even the situations or the people or whatever that I may have wanted to assign blame or stop there and think, you're causing this to me, I cannot do that now. Do you see what I'm saying? When you uproot stuff, we are because I really want people to understand this, because I see it so clear as day now, especially after going through the emotional stuff that I've gone through. It's amazing what unclogging that stuff will do. So if you see it as this, like I said before, like just picture you're an empty container. We're not. We are filled with love, everything else. But just picture ourselves as if you're looking at a stick figure or whatever, and you're visualizing so you can see inside. That's what I'm saying. Empty, in that way you can see that inside. Picture toxicity over a lifetime, situations and such, insecurities, anything that caused any kind of hiding of emotions or suppressing emotions, anything like that. And it builds up inside. So now picture that in that hollow figure. You have that darkness down below, but you're pushing it down. Okay, then as life goes on, you keep trying to keep that down. It gets a little easier, maybe you become happier in life and such. But over time, it's almost like, the champagne bottle kind of thing. It fizzes, it fizzes, it fizzes. It's going to start working its way out. Now, something comes along, let's just say, I don't know. I should have used a different example. I'm picturing magnets now. Say that's magnetic. I don't know. Picture that darkness down as some sort of metal. Heavy metal toxicity. And we're not going to talk about the physical kind. Picture that's every negative situation or every insecurity or every negative emotion that you've tried to suppress is almost like heavy metals in your body. Now those heavy actual metals, okay, that are attracted to magnets. How about that? Think of specific ones that are or aren't. So I don't want to make myself sound dumb. But anyway, picture that down at the bottom of your body, and it's been down there. Now all of a sudden a situation, a person, whatever comes along, and you may be happy, you may be content, you may have forgotten about all that, all right? And that person is magnetic, okay? Something they say, something they do, or a situation out there that just happens, a situation has some sort of magnetic energy attached to it. What does it do? It's like, now I'm picturing the champagne bottle, because it's kind of bubbling it up, it's pulling it up. It's pulling it up. Uh-oh, what is this? And what do you automatically do? You assign blame to the trigger object. And the trigger object, I haven't said that in years, by the way, because that's a paranormal term. But yeah, look at it like a trigger object. That in the paranormal, by the way, is why they call it a trigger object. They'll put, if they're trying to get the attention of an alleged child spirit or something, they may put a doll or something. So they call it a trigger object, something that would attract the certain type of entities that we seek. Okay, so this is the same scenario, really. But picture that, magnetic situation or whatever, even if it's just something that we hear. Like with me, I ended up being very highly triggered and didn't realize it, didn't even know where it was coming from, by the whole political thing that had to do with sexual assault and harassment and such. Okay, now I sat here wanting to assign that blame to the trigger object, which was the situation itself. But it didn't explain why it triggered me so much. What it was is those heavy metals deep inside that was being pulled to that magnet. You see what I'm saying? The darkness inside, the stuff that we suppress down inside, memories, old situations, old experiences, anything that caused us any kind of damage emotionally, that's pushed down inside in our organs, anywhere else, that trigger object is going to pull it up. We're going to want to assign blame to the trigger object, right? When in all actuality, it's stuff deep inside us. So that's what I wanted to clarify. And when I say that I'm seeing a shift a little bit, I'm kind of watching a couple of different groups now. It's almost like there's different groups. There's those of us. I'm going to put myself in that category because I got to the point where I recognized all this. And with that, I was able to deal with it because I was able to deal with myself and stop trying to deal with every trigger object out there and finally release it. When I used to ask, I am ready to release something, I just don't know how, and I just don't know what it is. I realized what it is stuff deep inside, and how to do that was to start nurturing myself and not try to put the blame or control the situations surrounding me that may trigger it, because otherwise they'll just continue. Other sources will continue to be able to trigger that. Are you seeing what I'm saying? So when I talk about those two different groups right now, the group of us who have been, I don't know if you want to call it enlightened, whatever, but who feel the positive effects of the negative feelings of last year, and now there's a lightness. I feel it's so much easier for me to stay grounded. It's so much easier for me to have great perspective, have good energy, have good thoughts. I'm a lot more patient with people. I'm less on edge. Everything else, it's because I feel like a lot of stuff truly came up. And it does come up in onions, layering like an onion, like I talked about before, which, eventually something else will come up because it goes deeper each time. And I'm so fascinated by that. But there's the other group, like I said, and now I'm starting to see that a little wave of heaviness again. And that was just one of many examples. And that's why I brought it up as an example, because a lot of us probably see or have experienced that, where we're in a relationship and we want to focus so much on what we think the other person's doing toward us, okay? Or maybe they did. And that's what I picked out, this one particular circumstance that I watched, because I don't know the details, but I've seen the transition of one of the people in that relationship. And it seems like they've been hurt. My intuition tells me that they've been hurt. It might not even be something that the other person did, but maybe a deep, dark insecurity or something that is coming up that the other person may have triggered. And I'm very good at this, by the way. I'm very intuitive when it comes to that kind of stuff. I fascinate myself with that when I take situations I know nothing about or whatever, and then I kind of figure it out. But with that, it's no longer like years and years ago it would have been fascinating for me, like, oh, look at this drama play out. It's no longer drama to me when I see those situations and I pay attention and I start watching because to me life is fascinating. Psychology, emotions, everything is fascinating. So when I do figure it out, it actually wears on me a little because I so want to say, I want to jump in there and guide, but then I don't know the situation. I don't know if my intuition is correct on everything, so you can't do that. And it's not up for me to do anyway. But like in that particular one scenario of a few, but I'm picking out this one, I look at that as you have an opportunity here. If you feel yourself changing inside, kind of lashing out of unhappiness, it's something within yourself that's being triggered, and you're assigning the blame on that other person. Because I see this one person actually acting out, doing things that would be hurtful toward the other. And I guess that's where I started thinking about that. I started looking at, maybe we're going back into a heavy period, but I don't think we're really supposed to, universally. You know, Elizabeth Peru, this is supposed to be a lighter year. But then I realized that last year also affected people who, in that darker way, who weren't aware that everything they started developing, that inner turmoil or whatever, is within them, and it's not to be assigned by other people, your trigger objects. Does that make sense? The thing is, excuse me, in my head, I can totally visualize all this. I can feel it. I'm passionate about it. When you feel that life shift, when you're able to flow with the universe, like I keep saying, that means, excuse me, all those scenarios that pop up, you find a way to use them to your full advantage. And it doesn't mean that life is always going to be happy moment to moment. It means you're going to go through a dark time, but you are aware that you have to. Like I was aware last year that I had to go through everything that I was going through. I was aware that I had to get really down deep in order to really unleash whatever was there. Okay? And we all have something. There's very few people, I think, out there in the world who's had such a just happy life to where nothing traumatized them at all, nothing affected them, to bury it. Even the slightest little thing that would have affected somebody, and they don't even realize they buried it. Even the slightest little thing, okay? So when I was talking a couple years ago, when I first came on air, I had a show and it was talking about basically healing daily. I think daily, maybe not daily, but whenever we're out in public, whenever we're attempting something, anything, even if it's from get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and oh my gosh, I've got bags under my eyes. In the back of your mind, it all depends on how that affects you, but I'm using it as an example of something that you might think about, or it might affect you in the moment. You kind of just push it down because you're like, oh, whatever, but the mindset in the back of your mind is there, like, oh, I look so aged, or I look so tired, or whatever. That could be a very small snippet, okay? And so over time, you build up all those snippets over time, and how do you look at yourself? It affects how you look at yourself, and that's why I talk about healing daily, even on the smallest of things. I can look in the mirror, see bags under my eyes in the morning, or look and be like, boy, you really look rugged. And that might stick with me. Now, if I harped on it all day, that's one thing that, I don't know, that might actually be healthier than just kind of like try to mask it and say, oh, well. Now, turning it into a positive thing is a good thing. Turning around with something like that and saying, you know what? I feel proud of myself at this point in life. I've gone so far, everything else. And if I had a rough night or whatever, so what? I know I can bounce back. A lot of times that's what I'll do because I know I can bounce back. And that's a healthy thing. That's processing things like that in the moment. Anything. Now, you're going to say, well, that sounds stupid. That's just the smallest little thing. Are you kidding me that all that kind of stuff is supposed to be a big deal? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's just a small example of little small things that without realizing it, we're either processing as they pop up every single day, or we're pushing it down, or we're making excuses, or we're dealing with it and we're flipping it around to make something positive out of it. Okay? Those are the little psychological things and emotional things I think over time can build up. Anything, or a major traumatic experience. Whatever affects you in a major traumatic way are those things that we tend to either deal with or push down, and those are the things that pop up. Those are the things that get triggered over time, and sometimes we don't even realize why we're being triggered. Okay, so with that being said, all of that being said, that's kind of what I have seen with a group of people. I think maybe my own thought process here is that their next step, they're going to have that stuff uprooted like I did last year. Now they have the opportunity to look at it the way I did, or continue to look at it like life is beating me down. And that's going to determine the rest of the year. Now, that's why I was saying Happy New Year, because you have the opportunity at every point to determine how the year is going to go, depending on how you deal with the muck. Okay? You can flip it around, make it a positive thing as a lesson, and try to change it, or try to deal with it. It's, you have to deal with it first and release it, and then change your circumstances and such in the way you look at yourself, the way you look at the world, everything else, or just continue to look at life like it's beating you down. And when I see people who at some point I saw like a shine in their eyes and a smile on their face, and over time they become kind of dark. They seem like they're kind of dark. They don't smile. They, do whatever they do. I pay attention to that. I recognize that now as deep-seated things in life building up and coming up, and they're going to get to their points. And this is many people at this point. I'm not talking about anyone specific. So with that being said, Happy New Year. Let's try to go back to our mindset at the beginning of the year. At least the majority of us who probably had a positive mindset. And if you did even end last year with a positive mindset, go back to that. Just try to go back to that. But set aside the negative stuff that you feel and deal with it. Figure out how to deal with that. So, okay, now what I wanted to start the show off, and I kind of already skipped ahead and forgot, before we continue on those concepts of judging, basically judging in perspective, and how when you practice doing this in your head, you'll start looking at every situation as an open-ended possibility, okay? Any situation that you're unaware of, or any situation you're not personally involved with or whatever, is an open-ended possibility. Open-ended list of possibilities, I guess. So before we get to that, I got to tell you, I went to this past Sunday, I went to, drum roll please, the Michael Bublé concert. Oh my goodness, I will go. This is my first time seeing him. I have to Google it. He kept talking about being gone for 5 years, and he was showing such gratitude. It was hard for him to not get emotional at different times, showing such gratitude about how people have helped him these past 5 years, and coming back with such, blessing. I don't know what happened in his personal life within the 5 years, and it seemed like there was something there, so I need to look that up. But it made me feel even better about being at that concert, knowing that, this is his big comeback, I guess, coming back around the people he loved. And I love this man, okay? Let me tell you, he's right up there with Harry Connick Jr. for me. I'm talking about man crush as far as like my celebrity crush. He's there as well, but Harry, I'm not cheating. You're still my number one. But the two are very similar in their characteristics, their classiness, their style, their legitimate love of people, their positive attitude. They want to put love out there in the world. They're dedicated, and they have really similar kind of music style, and they're both so extremely talented. I'm very much drawn to both of them. And add to that the whole big band feeling. Chicago, after I told you about that concert that I saw last summer, and I became obsessed with Chicago for a while. I wanted to fly to different places and watch that concert again because I was mesmerized by that concert. I kept watching those videos over and over again. So right now, like Chicago, Harry Connick Jr. and Michael Bublé, that whole sound just pulls me in, Anyway, it was an amazing concert. It was a pain to get to the venue. Okay, I got to the venue. It's raining outside. I'm so glad I almost wore heels. I thought about dressing up. I had a really cute Venus dress that I only wore, I think, once so far. And I was going to wear my high heel boots with it. And, I'm like, I'm going to the Harry, I love you. I'm going to the Michael Bublé concert. And no doubt he's going to be all, dressed in a suit. And chances are people are going to be, it's one of those concerts where you feel good about dressing up. So I really wanted to dress up. And last minute, maybe this shows age. I don't know. Maybe it just shows wisdom. At the last minute, I thought, I want to be comfortable. So I, wore a nice jacket instead. and I kept changing to where I found the perfect, very comfortable jeans. Very nice, but comfortable jeans. And then I wore flats. And they were cute, but they had memory foam in them. And I thought, oh my gosh, where's my life gone? And then I thought, no, let's change that around. I'm using my head now. Okay. So part of that was because I really didn't know the venue. And I'm like, what if I have to walk, what if I have to really walk far? And I remember sitting in the seats at the Harry Connick Jr. concert when I drove up to Tennessee to watch it. And it was one of those theaters, because this one was also in like a big, this was in like a big arena. I don't know what they call it, but I was under the impression when I first looked it up that it was, because I haven't been, this was at the Infinity, Infinity, Cobb? Oh my goodness, the Infinity Center. I think it was in Duluth, Georgia. So it was supposed to take me like 45 minutes to get there. Ended up taking me about an hour. And the impression I had of the venue when I looked it up, mind you, I bought my tickets like 2 months ago. So I had to, in November actually. So I had to squirm around and try to find the information. At the last minute, I thought, oh no, did my tickets not go through? I'm meeting a friend there and now I may not even be able to go. But I could have sworn I looked up the venue and it looked more like a theater. And I remember the last time I was sitting in a theater, I dressed up in a nice, it was my BB dress, really pretty dress. I had to be careful that too much wasn't spilling out. And it was really, really pretty dress and high heels. And then I sat in this theater and it was so close quarters and I had no leg room. And I was uncomfortable. Even though everyone was dressed up and looked so beautiful, I felt, really glam, like with everybody else there. And I thought, I dressed appropriately. But this time I'm like, I'm going for the comfort, because I remember sitting there last time and how uncomfortable I was. This is going to be really comfortable. Well, come to find out, the traffic going into the venue was so unbelievably crazy. It took me so much longer to get there. But my GPS told me to make the first left into the first parking area. And I'm thinking, why is this line of traffic going all the way in there? Here's parking right here. Oh, little girl, you're so naive. I should have followed the traffic. In this case, I should have followed the crowd, because I ended up, it probably was a mile away. Okay, and it was raining and it was cold and I didn't wear a coat. I just had this jacket with a long sleeve sweater under it, which was it was too cold, but I thought, I'm just going to get on my car, go into the venue. I don't want to carry a coat around. So needless to say, I hiked and hiked and hiked, and I had to use the restroom by the time I got there so badly. I had drunk a bunch of water because I've been detoxing. I'm on a detox right now. It's just a 5-day one, but it's a fasting detox. Requires a lot of water. I do it quite often, and it makes me feel good. We talked about detoxing before and how it helps also get, pull up old stuff physically that also releases things emotionally. And I'm really trying to uproot everything and anything. So, combination of all that, I will tell you, on my way walking in there, I was just miserable. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I got in there. It was such a huge arena. There were so many people. Guess what? I had to walk all the way around the building, like all the way to the other side on top of it to get to my seat. And then I sat down and he was just starting. All that negativity just slipped away, because he is amazing. I love his personality. I swear I want to meet that guy. I'm like, Harry Connick Jr. This, of course, in every woman's mind out there, I'm sure, especially every single woman. Harry Connick Jr., we've got Michael Bublé, and all I keep thinking is, why couldn't I have met him before he met his wife? And why couldn't he even fall madly in love with me? Everything from just being grateful, the gratitude, being super sweet, being very sincere, extremely talented, amazingly adorable. I'm like, I'm in love. Oh no. It's funny because I texted, or my friend who was there, my coworker, she was there with her husband, who was my old boss, as a matter of fact. So I'm friends with both of them. And she texted, or she put something on Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, that concert was amazing. He's just amazing. And she's like, I was wondering if you were up there falling in love with him. I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact, I was. I was falling in love with him. However, Harry, he'll always be my number one. celebrity crush who, I will never have the opportunity to have for myself, but maybe recognizing those traits once again, being reminded of those traits that draw me in, those traits that I hope I end up with someone like that someday. Maybe that'll draw that particular type of person to me. So anyway, if you ever have the opportunity to watch the Michael Bublé concert, gosh, I recommend it. You want to talk about lifting your spirit, taking you into an emotional place, and just beautiful voice, and just an amazing entertainer. It was fun. I mean, he had the crowd just... And some of that music is that music I like, that big band music that is almost dark. It's a dark romantic. He started off that way, and he's like, it's dark, isn't it? It was like this dark tones and such, but beautiful concert, amazing. I got to catch up a little bit. I got to catch up with a friend of mine I haven't seen in a while, so hopefully my friend Sandra and I will be able to catch up again at some point. So, all right, now all that being said, we have about 20 more minutes left. This is just basic. We've done perspective shows before where I just gave you a list of different scenarios to look at them from different perspectives. Part of the reason I'm doing this, like I said, is because, one thing will trigger it. I'll be driving, I'll see a scenario, and this is exactly what happened. I'll see a scenario, how my mind works. I'm wondering how many people out there think along these lines or are deep thinkers like this. Okay, let me stop. Well, okay, with this one scenario, and I'll tell you the scenario in a moment because I'm going to tell you the different things that came through my mind that started the thought process for this show. But it was seeing a scenario, and immediately what comes into my mind, I test my intuition, but it's not always an intuitive thing. You see something, and it's not always intuition. There are certain things that you may see, whether they're items, circumstances, situations, whatever, even emotions in a person's face or something that you might see that would generally, if you asked a group of people, okay, assess this right here. You have this situation. Give me a storyline. I love that, by the way. Give me a storyline. I would love to do that sometime. Just get a group of people. Maybe I'll start doing that. How much fun would that be? I'll do like a meetup group or something, and I'll do my own experiments, my own psychological and emotional experiments on people. Give them a scenario or a picture of somebody and tell them, give me a storyline and tell me your emotions behind it. And then a lot of times, if you're anything like me at all, a lot of times, just seeing the slightest little thing that takes your mind someplace, and you start thinking of the scenario, and it might remind you of other scenarios, and it'll take you into an emotional place. Next thing you know, you're angry or you're happy or whatever, and you're going, okay, wow, just because I saw that, I'm that person. And I'll do that. And what it is with me, I think, is when I'm in that moment, like driving or whatever, and it's kind of, my brain is bored. Believe it or not, it does get relaxed. My brain does relax. Then maybe I'll pick out something, and I'll just automatically start looking at the storyline. I am great. I love people watching, and here's why. I do this every single time I'm in like a mass transit kind of situation, or even at the mall, but a place where there's so many people around me that have so many different stories. They don't know each other, okay? And I do it more in places where there's so many strangers, barely anybody knows each other, but there's a mass number of people. And that will be like on the tram at the airport, or even just sitting at the airport. It'll be on the plane. A lot of mine is at the airport, okay? And I'll suddenly stop, and it's bad that this is the first thing I think of, but I go to myself, I think, there is a percentage of people here who are killers. How dark is that? I do, though, because you look around, and a lot of us might tend to, some people might do the opposite. They might look at everybody and look at the darkness in them. They might look at everybody and think, you're not worthy of anything. You've done something in your life, okay? And those are people, I think, have darkness trapped within themselves. They've lost trust. Okay, some of us continue to look at and recognize that there's positive in people. So what I'll do, though, is I'll test myself, and not intuition. I'm not testing my intuition, but the fact that I'll still automatically kind of assign or look for the good in everybody I see, whether they're strangers or otherwise. I do. I look for that deep, goodness, and that's an automatic. But picturing their storyline, I'll think to myself, as naive as you may be in automatically assuming the good with everybody, look around, look at these faces. without stereotyping, because I'll think about that too. I'll think, okay, stereotypically, who would I think here had committed a murder? Who would I think here is like the biggest charity person ever? And I'll test my own stereotyping. Does that sound weird? I'll test and see if I would stereotype the same type of people that other people would. And the thing is, especially people I might stereotype in a negative way, I'll look, or the people, this isn't actually me, the people I would assume like other people would stereotype. You know, you got that guy standing there with the tattoos and, you know, I always mention the tattoo thing because I hear that one stereotyped a lot, but you'd automatically assume, or a lot of people would automatically assume, well, that's the bad boy, or that's the guy who, you know, probably does drugs, or that's the guy who probably, you know, is killed or whatever. I'll look at them. I'll pay attention to them because most people would assume that they were the bad guys. Excuse me. And I'll really watch them. I'll really pay attention to them, and I'll like try to focus deep within. I do that with a lot of people, and I try to see what kind of life they might have and the goodness inside. I'll do it the other way because a lot of times that's what ends up happening. Do you ever see that meme that pops out that shows a little girl? It's a shadow meme kind of, and it's very, very, very powerful. It shows a little girl standing in front of this big he's very tall guy who has tattoos and such. I believe in the depiction he does. And he's looking over her. She's a little girl in pigtails. She's got her hands behind her back, and he's got his hands behind his back. And it gives you the indication that she's a sweet little innocent girl, and he's like this guy that's about to attack. But then you look at the shadow, and in the shadow, it shows the little girl's holding a knife behind her back, and the guy's holding a bouquet of roses. And I thought that was the most powerful depiction ever. So that's why I do this. That's why I automatically look at all these people, to stay open-minded about people and understand that I, just like everybody else out there in the world, you have no idea what's really going on in any situation or any person unless you're personally involved with it. Okay. Now, so I do that at airports, especially in mass transit kind of situations. And I pay attention. And I think that person over there who seems so scholarly and this and that, they could be a mass murderer. Because then I'll reflect back to things like Ted Bundy, people like Ted Bundy, and documentaries I've seen of mass killers or people who would have just defied the stereotype right off the bat and who've done horrible things. And then I picture people who you would automatically look at and be afraid of, or automatically look at and stereotype. They could be the biggest, gentlest giants you know. Okay? So that's why I continue to do this, because I don't want to stereotype people based on what they look like or even their actions, even if they're gruffy, even if they're, they seem like they're always have a, mean look on their face or anything like that. So now getting back to, some of the situations, just to open your mind a little to understand people, situations, and such, why it is important to keep an open mind and not to automatically judge or assume anything. And like I said, by now, it's the smallest little thing that'll stir up all this activity in my head that comes up with this big concept that I want to put out to everyone because I'm fascinated by it. So I was driving. Here's where it started. I was driving down the street, and I looked up and I saw a truck, and strapped in was a box that showed it was a depiction of what did it read? Oh, now I wish I would remember. Whatever it was gave me the impression that it might be a doghouse. Okay, in this box. Now, my initial reaction, or my initial thought, because I looked at that and I get curious, because of the way it was wrapped and the way what it read on the outside, I was concerned because I'd seen so many things on Facebook of a dog being in it in the back of the truck in the cold. So I was looking, going, please, God, please, please, please don't let me see that. Please don't let me see that, because I don't know what would follow suit, if I saw that. I would hope I would just call the cops. I would definitely stay on the tail of the person. I would hope that the cops would get there first, because I don't know exactly how I would approach it, So that being said, I saw that. my mind started going into dark places. It started leading me into the pictures I saw on Facebook of people, with their animals, like in the back of their trucks or, in a crate on the top of their vehicle or something, in the cold, all this. And I've seen a lot of them. Unbelievable how people think. By the way, I'm a very open-minded person. That is unacceptable. If anyone out there does that, you're a jerk. I don't care how you take that. You're a jerk. Animals should not be treated like that. Okay? If I ever saw, if I ever came across somebody who did that, don't really know exactly how far I would go. I would hope that I wouldn't go any further than calling the police and ensuring the safety and security of that animal. But I'm going to leave it at that. Now, that being said, see, that's how highly I'm triggered with something like that. I don't want to stop being triggered by something like that. That's nothing that needs to come up and be healed, except that I've seen those scenarios over and over. And that's the problem, is that I've seen them on Facebook. I've seen them on TV. I know it exists. That's where my darkness having to do with that situation has become such a big deal in me. But the thing is, if I ever allow that to be healed and released, I don't want to be desensitized to animals. I still want to be that person. If I see something like that, it triggers me enough to do something about it. So that's a darkness inside of me that's going to stay where it needs to be used when it needs to be used. So going back, you hear how highly triggered I get at the idea of it. Now, I stopped myself because I started thinking all these lines, along all these lines, like, what do I do? What do I do? And then I realized, I'm like, Mel, you're looking at a truck with a box that's got probably a doghouse in it. Now, I started thinking about that. I started picturing, because I do this, I picture storylines. And my mind goes in those places where I just picture storylines. It's not like I'm really trying to figure it out at this point. I realized there wasn't a dog in there, so everything was fine. Everything was legal. The person wasn't a total, devil. But what I started thinking about is I will start a storyline, and I'll think, maybe that person's taking it home so that they can set it up outside for their dog to be an outside dog. Okay, now, I have a couple of different thoughts on that. I've seen, like I said, too much stuff where people have put insufficient animal housing outside and they leave their animals outside, or even tied to where they can barely even go in and out of their house, where they don't insulate it properly, where they don't even put food or water by it. Okay, that's unacceptable. But I've also known people who have dogs who love to be outside as long as they give them access to inside and outside. And I've seen it. It's okay. It works that way. They have access to go inside, outside. They can go in and be as warm as they want. They have dog houses outside that are well insulated. And I always see those particular dogs, and this has been in the family. Okay, so this is how it used to be when my parents had these two big dogs, Buddy and Boots, or no, Cody, Buddy and Cody, very, very, very large dogs. Hair like crazy. They were outside dogs, but they had the garage, the closed-in garage. It was like a huge garage that was heated. They had the whole backyard that they can go to, and they can go to the surrounding outside to patrol when they were alive. So that could be double, and I've learned a lot of my lessons by watching that. My parents are huge animal lovers, and I'm a huge animal lover. And I'm a big advocate about you don't keep your animals outside in the cold. Now, I thought twice about that. But then I realized, going home, I'm like, yeah, but you never know the story. Like, somebody can go past here and they can see those animals outside in the snow. And their story would be, and they could see maybe the dog houses in the back or whatever. And they can look at that. That could be a picture put on Facebook that would stir me up, okay? But I know the reality. I know that they were given the opportunity to go in and out at their own leisure. A lot of times the one would jump up on the doghouse outside, so that would look bad to passerbyers. All the snow and the dogs laying on the top of the doghouse, poor dog. No, they were hard to get in. They loved it outside. When they had the opportunity to come in or out, and like I said, the inside was great. It was huge. And we were right, inside that door as well. Or be outside or be in their houses. They were always laying outside. Now, that still says animals need to be inside. Okay, now I'm going too far in it. But what I'm saying is I've learned over time you can't automatically assess things based on what you see. You can't come up with your own storyline, because then I thought this way. I said, okay, let's offset that. In my mind, I just came up with a storyline that triggered me in a negative way because it reminded me of other things that are really bother me. People who do that. They have an outdoor dog that doesn't want to be outdoors, and they don't properly insulate and such. So then I thought, okay, you don't know that that's the situation. You have no idea what that situation is. So let's put a different storyline on it. Let's assume that's an animal rescue. That's somebody who works for an animal rescue, and they just bought a dog house because they're trying desperately to help out someone who can't afford to get a dog house or doesn't know better. So, and I've seen animal charities do that, where they will set up a situation to help the dog, especially when either the owner won't give the dog up and won't do it on their own, or they simply can't afford it, or they might be elderly, whatever. And I put that picture in my mind. That would be another Facebook video or post that I would read that would put a smile on my face. So those are two scenarios. You take a picture of, or a video of one where there's an animal dog house out there, that dog doesn't have proper insulation, all that kind of stuff, and it creates this anger inside. You take a picture of the other, or a video, the animal shelter person that they pull their money together to get a nice insulated dog house for this outdoor dog to help out a patron, to help out the dog, and it puts a smile on your face. Okay, two totally different reactions based on the same similar picture in my mind, or the truck with this box. Okay, and my mind went into two different places. What does that tell you? Two things. It tells you major things. If it doesn't, then you're not listening to me. That, first of all, judging doesn't make sense. If you're judging a situation you're not a part of and you don't know 100% what the situation is, those are two different extremes. There's an angel on one side, a devil on the other. Okay, I just thought of both of those. Either one of those can be plausible. Okay, and that was the point. I guess that was the main point, is basically not to judge, not to assume anything, okay? Not to assume anything, and also not to take it deep within yourself as well unless you do know the situation, okay? Now, that's one of many examples, and here's the thing, and here's why I test myself, and this is just, it's fun stuff for my brain, is I'm always coming up with storylines before. I told you before the storyline that happened when the person, I can't even remember exactly what it was, but this was another show, and it did prompt that show about you never know the circumstances, and you can build your own timeline and create the circumstance like I just did, okay? Create a circumstance that can lead you in one way or another and help you understand people a little more. And that was one where it was a car. I was coming one direction, and I was waiting to turn. They were sitting there. They didn't have their turn signal on, so they were priority to pass me so I can turn behind them. And they were him-hawing and such. So finally, like the last second, I think either the last second they turned their turn signal on and turned is what they did. And the first thing that came in my mind was all this negativity, okay? This was, like I said, on a different show. I might not be remembering it exactly, but I do remember what came into my mind. All this negativity, like, oh my gosh, you're wasting people's time. You're going to cause an accident, this and that, because you're stupid. Now, I don't like doing that, and I hear people do that. I know some people who I see pretty often, and they come out and they say that often. This person's stupid, that's stupid, everything is stupid, and it gets to me because it's a negative thing. And it's also, basically you don't know other people's stories, so they're not all stupid. Not everybody is, bad or stupid. So I told you in that other show about how I went through my own timeline in my head, and I started getting more and more personal with that person, even though I would never know who they are. They were, gone. I don't know what car it was, whatever. I would never know their story. I would never know who it was. I would never know if they didn't know the rules of the road. I wouldn't know if they hesitated because of an some medical or something that happened. I would never know if they were, scared to drive, if they were new, whatever. So when I went down the timeline, by the time I got to work, I had gone from being really frustrated, and that only lasted a few seconds, really. That's why I've been so pleased, and that's why I realized my own transformation is because I started off where I would harp on that, and how I was telling you also about how that could have affected my whole day, which is crazy, how something small like that could end up affecting your whole day. I could have come to work and snapped off at somebody else, given them a bad day, or whatever. But then I looked at it in a different way, and I thought, okay, all the possibilities were, maybe that hesitation stopped me from being in a car accident. Excuse me. So that talks about, butterfly effect. Okay, I went there. And also, I started personalizing the person. I started coming up with all these different scenarios about the person. What if it was an elderly person who As much as we want to jump on sometimes, like get off the road, blah, 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 how would you feel once you get there? People don't do that enough. People don't generally put themselves in that position and understand that we can be in the same position as anybody else at any time who's being judged or criticized, whatever. It could have been a teenager who's just new, like first time on their own, and they're just so nervous about getting into an accident. We have to have more patience. In that case, there were so many lessons I got from that one crazy scenario. That's why I had brought that to the show. Okay, so this is kind of along the same lines, is when you see something, let your mind build a storyline. Test yourself. I love doing this because the more I test myself, the more I automatically flip the switch and start coming up with good scenarios, okay? Or it's helping me learn patience as well. It's also helping me learn to stop trying to control other situations around me based on what I think they are and just control my own reactions. That's a huge thing in this world. If we can control our own reactions to situations, that's the best thing. But on top of it, if we can control our own reactions to situations we don't even know anything about, instead of going by an initial thought or an assumption, I actually meant to give you many more examples. I only had that one in my head, but I knew I would come up with a ton more. And I'm going to do another show, another perspective show someday where I do nothing but perspectives. And I'm going to throw out so many different examples. Say you see this, what would come to your mind? If your mind goes in a negative place and build this storyline over here. But now, say it's over here. Because what that does, and I've seen stories like this before, and what that really does is it makes people more aware. A lot of people will tend to go for what they would consider the automatic storyline. And what it does, I believe, is makes a person more aware, and the more you practice, it's like practicing at the gym or practicing anything else. The more you practice that, the more you will make yourself aware that the obvious isn't always there. And there are always so many storylines that can be attached to that one scenario you don't know. So don't judge it. Don't respond or react to it. Okay? Control your own emotions behind it. And think of how much different storylines that might affect you in a certain way is more about what you've got inside. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Stay tuned now for Tiffany Lewis, of course, the lovely Tiffany Lewis. I hope you're doing well, Tiffany. On Be the Change coming up next, and I'll talk to you next Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on clearsourceradio.com. Good night, everybody.